Right, so now we have the loom. It has the warp threads on it. There are 2 strands to each warp, and we're going to systematically work behind the top one and then behind the bottom one. In order not to have 2 splices in the same place, I'm going to fold this in half and then pull it up a bit so that they're slightly different lengths. That's just to offset the splicing, that's all. So with your first strand, tuck the strip of fabric through, and I'm going to be working to the left, so my left hand is my leading hand. We've got to work systematically top, bottom, top, bottom. The leading hand brings the yarn over the second yarn, and you tuck the second yarn under the next warp. It now becomes the leading yarn. The leading yarn twines over the top of the second yarn, which tucks under the next warp strand. Twine with the leading hand, tuck it under the next warp. Twine with the leading hand, tuck the second yarn under the next warp. Now this business of remembering top, bottom is only in this first row, because once you've got them set, you see they lay beside each other. And I'm just making my stitches about an even length. It's all guesswork, it's quite spontaneous. You don't have to worry, because if you find that you've got it a little bit uneven, you can pull it about afterwards to fill the gaps.
I suppose if you wanted something really precise, you wouldn't be making rag rugs.
No, you wouldn't. No, you'd be sitting at a loom. A big loom.
A big loom.
Yes. Anyway, so remember, my leading hand is this yarn. Or this yarn is my leading yarn, I should say. This is the second yarn in my non-leading hand. I've tucked it under, so leading hand twines, second yarn goes under. The leading yarn twines, the second one goes under. Twine, under. Under the top, twine under the bottom. We're getting quite a bit of traffic.
We're getting quite a bit of traffic here, yes.
Holiday, people are on their way up to the lake. Anyway, we've almost got through this, because there'll be more detail about the actual weaving itself. I just wanted to show you how to start off. So anyway, I've twined with the leading hand, under, twine, under, twine, under, and here we are at the end. We've got to splice in another piece of fabric.
So you're always taking the top part of the warp first, because they're loops, aren't they? The warp is actually made of loops, so you're just taking the top bit first and then doing the back bit afterwards, the underpart, yes.
And it doesn't have to be started in that way. You can start it the other way around if you want. You don't have to start at the right hand side. You can start at the left hand side. If you're left handed and you find that easier, it doesn't matter. So here I am splicing in situ, you might say.
So as long as you do the same thing all the time,
yes,
on that particular project, then it doesn't matter.
That's right. Okay, so here's my leading yarn. Twine it and tuck the second yarn under, twine, tuck it under, twine, tuck it under, and on the last one, twine and tuck under. I do go into this in great detail a little bit later, but here is my leading hand. It twines. The second one now goes under in the opposite direction, because we've got to go back to the right. Because we're going back to the right, This is my leading hand. I'll show you that again.
Good.
So here we are. Leading yarn twines, second yarn goes under the last warp. Leading hand twines, the second yarn still goes under, but it's going back on itself because there's nowhere else for it to go to the left. It now becomes the leading yarn. So it twines, and the second yarn goes under. Now when you get two different colours working on here, you will have a very easy check to know that you're doing it right. But you can see I've put the yarn under where in the previous row it went under. You know, over, sorry. You know you've got it right. The last one went over, this one comes under. I'll just splice in another piece. In fact, I'll splice in a different colour so you can see how it works. It won't show up so well on the film though, but maybe you'll be able to see the splotches on the printed fabric. And you can see now that offsetting the very first piece of yarn we worked with means we didn't get both joins in the same place.
Right, I understand now.
The leading yarn is my right. So that one twines over the top of the second yarn, which goes under. Twine and under. Twine and under. And here I'm going to tuck the join behind there. I'm just going to hold it in place. And with the first row, you're determining your tension. Once you get your first row underway, out of the way, you'll have an idea of how big your stitches should be. These are actually bigger than the actual table mats I'm making. But I wanted you to be able to see it clearly. And you can see how using the nice thick t-shirt fabric gives something solid for and sizable for the wefts to be woven into. Here I am at the end. My leading yarn is the right hand because I'm going that way. It twines, the second yarn goes under. The leading hand twines and the second yarn goes under itself because there's nowhere else for it to go that way. So now it becomes the leading yarn. It twines and the printed one goes under. Twine and under. And
So
you know you've got it right because the plain has gone under where previously it was over the top, and so on. Can you see that clearly enough on the camera?
I think so.
Okay.
Turning the corner is still a little bit confusing for me at the moment, but I'm sure once I've got my hands on it'll be...
Well, I could find absolutely nothing written about how to do that, so I worked it out myself, and maybe we'll get people telling us how it should be done. But this works for me.
Well, perhaps when you do this one, if you can take it step by step very slowly with the hands away so I can see what's going on.
Okay. The plain yarn is the leading yarn. It twines. The second yarn, which is the printed yarn, goes under the next warp.
And that's the last warp.
Yes. That is now the leading yarn because it's in my left hand. It twines. The plain one, which is the second yarn, goes under the warp, but there are no warps here, so it's got to come back under the warp.
Right, okay.
There is. It's the only warp it can go under.
So whatever happens, they've all got to go under.
Yes, right. And it has now become the leading yarn because I've picked it up in my right hand, working toward the right, in the right direction. It's a bit of an unfortunate place to stop because, or maybe it's a good place to stop, because I've got to splice in 2 new lengths. When you get started, be careful not to pull on this because it will grow. If you've used a knitted fabric for your warp, it will grow. So in order to knock these up, do it as you go along, and I should have shown you earlier, nudge them up rather than tugging down. It's a great temptation to tug this one, but I go into that in much more detail later, and I will show you one that I've got underway. We'll finish it, take it off, and you'll see how these loops here get filled with the yarn. You don't have to do any cutting and knotting.
Okay.
Thank you.